There is a specific creature mentioned in the Bible that terrifies theologians. We hear endless sermons about the fire. We hear about the darkness. We hear about the weeping and gnashing of teeth. But for some reason, the modern church has gone silent about the other thing Jesus said waits in the darkness. He didn't just warn us about a place of heat. He warned us about a predator. Jesus called it the worm. But not just any worm. He described it as diabolical, a parasite that defies the laws of nature. He said it is a worm that does not die. Most people brush this off. They say, oh, it's just a metaphor. It represents guilt. They tell you it's a symbol of a guilty conscience gnawing at your mind. And that makes us feel safer. It makes hell sound like a psychological state, something locked inside your head. But what if they're wrong? What if Jesus, who claimed to have seen the underworld firsthand, was describing a literal biological reality of the spiritual realm? What if the worm that never dies is an actual entity, a bottom feeder of the abyss, waiting for its food source? And the terrifying part? The food source is the soul. Welcome back to Pick to Palace Stories. Today, we are opening the Bible to the verse that makes even the bravest scholars uncomfortable. We are going to look at the biology of the underworld, the ancient Hebrew warnings, and the horrific reality of Mark chapter 9. If you are brave enough to know what's actually down there, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's descend into the pit. To understand this monster, we first have to look at the scene of the crime. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, Jesus gives one of the most violent warnings in the entire New Testament. He isn't speaking gently here. He is telling his disciples that it is better to cut off their own hands and gouge out their own eyes than to end up in this specific place. He says, "It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than with two eyes to be thrown into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched." Notice the grammar. Jesus doesn't say the worm. He says their worm, possessive, as if every person who goes there is assigned one, as if the parasite belongs to the host. For centuries, skeptics have tried to explain this away using geography. They will tell you that the word Jesus used for hell was Gehenna. Now, this part is true. Gehenna was a real valley outside the walls of Jerusalem. In the Old Testament, it was a place of horror where Israelites sacrificed children to the idol Molech. By Jesus' time, it had become the city dump. It was a place where trash, animal carcasses, and the bodies of criminals were thrown. Because there was so much rotting meat, the valley was crawling with maggots, and to keep the smell down, fires were kept burning 24/7. So the pastors say, see, Jesus was just using a metaphor. He was comparing hell to a burning garbage dump with maggots. But there is a massive hole in that theory. In a physical garbage dump, the maggots eventually die. Why? Because they run out of meat. When a worm eats a body, the body disappears. Once the body is gone, the worm starves. That is the cycle of nature. But Jesus said this worm does not die. This implies two terrifying things. Number one, the worm is immortal. And number two, the body it is eating never disappears. This brings us to a concept called the resurrection of the damned. The Bible teaches that everyone is resurrected, not just the saved. In the book of Daniel and Revelation, we are told that the wicked are given bodies to exist in the lake of fire. If the worm is literal, then it suggests a horrific ecosystem, a body that is constantly regenerating, and a parasite that is constantly feeding. Let's look at the source code. Jesus was quoting the prophet Isaiah, the very last verse of the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 24. It says, "And they will go out and look on the dead bodies of those who rebelled against me. The worms that eat them will not die. The fire that burns them will not be quenched, and they will be loathsome to all mankind." Did you catch that? Isaiah explicitly mentions dead bodies, pagar in Hebrew, carcasses, physical forms. This is not a metaphor for a guilty conscience. A guilty conscience doesn't have a carcass. A guilty conscience is a thought. You cannot look at a thought.
Isaiah says the righteous will look upon these bodies. This suggests that the worm is an external creature, a scavenger of the underworld, designed by God for one specific purpose: distinct, eternal consumption. In our world, we have creatures called extremophiles. There are tube worms that live inside boiling volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean. They thrive in heat that would melt human skin. They don't need sunlight. They feed on sulfur and chemical death. If God created biological life that can survive inside a volcano on Earth, why do we doubt He created spiritual life that can survive the lake of fire? Imagine the scene. The Bible describes hell as a place of isolation, darkness. But you are not alone. You have a companion, their worm. Some ancient Jewish commentaries suggest this creature is the physical manifestation of corruption. Just as your body generates worms when it rots in the grave, your soul, corrupted by sin and separated from the source of life, generates its own devourer. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's look at the metaphor theory again, because it might be actually scarier than the physical worm. The Greek word used for worm in Mark 9 is skolex. In ancient Greek literature, this word was often associated with something that gnaws from the inside out. If the worm is not a physical monster, then it is a memory. Imagine possessing a mind that cannot sleep, a mind that cannot be distracted by Netflix or work or food. Just you, in the dark, with perfect clarity. The worm is the memory of every time you heard the gospel and said, "Not yet." The worm is the replay of every sin, every person you hurt, looping forever. Physical pain has a limit. You pass out, your nerves burn away. But mental anguish, regret, that is a fire that fuels itself. If the worm is your own regret, then you are the food source. You are eating yourself forever, and you are never consumed. However, the Bible is rarely just a metaphor when it uses such specific details. When Revelation describes locusts with the face of men and teeth of lions, we pay attention. When Daniel describes beasts rising from the sea, we study it. Why do we water down the worm? In Job 25, verse 6, the Bible calls man a maggot and a worm in comparison to God's holiness. It's a harsh image, but it connects to a spiritual law. Death attracts decomposition. If a human being enters eternity without the spirit of life, which is Jesus Christ, they are spiritually dead. And in the universe God created, where there is a dead body, the worms gather. This isn't just about punishment, it's about consequences. It's about the natural order of the spiritual world. This image, the undying worm and the unquenchable fire, is terrifying. It was meant to be. Jesus didn't use this language to scare us for no reason. He used it like a danger high voltage sign on a fence. He was pleading with us. He was saying, the ecosystem of the outer darkness is not made for you. Don't go there. The reason Jesus sweated blood in the Garden of Gethsemane wasn't just because he was afraid of dying. It was because he was about to take that worm upon himself. On the cross, Jesus quoted Psalm 22. But do you know what verse 6 of that psalm says? "But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people." Did you catch that? Jesus called himself a worm. Why? Because in that moment, he became the sin of the world. He allowed the decomposition of death to touch him so that it didn't have to us. He entered the darkness so we could walk in the light. The worm that never dies is real. Whether it is a physical creature waiting in the dark or the eternal gnawing of a soul that realizes it is too late, it is not a fate you want to gamble with. The exit door from that place is open right now, but it won't be open forever. What do you think? Is the worm a literal creature waiting in the abyss, or is it the sound of your own regret? Let me know in the comments below. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. I'll see you in the next story.